The scorching sun, a brazen orb in the azure canvas of the upper kingdom sky, beat down upon the Giza plateau. It was a heat that permeated bone, a dryness that cracked lips and scoured throats, yet it was a heat that had forged the very landscape for millennia. Across this desolate, sun-baked expanse, 3 colossal sentinels of golden limestone rose, their peaks shimmering like distant stars, defying the logic of the known world. They were the pyramids, the houses of eternity, monuments to the divine power of the pharaohs and to Imhotep, royal scribe and burgeoning architect. They were an infuriating, breathtaking, and ultimately irresistible enigma. Imhotep was not like other men of his time. While his peers, and indeed most of Egypt, accepted the pyramids as gifts of the gods, divine creations wrought by unseen hands or by a sheer, incomprehensible outpouring of pharaonic will, Imhotep saw only questions. He was a man of papyrus and stylus, of measurements and calculations, of intricate engineering diagrams and the precise flow of the Nile. His mind, honed by years studying in the Parank, the house of life, in Memphis, sought not faith, but understanding. And understanding where the pyramids were concerned was a desert mirage. Born in a small village nestled on the verdant banks of the Nile, not far from the shadow cast by the Great Pyramid of Khufu himself, Imhotep had spent his childhood gazing upon the impossible structures. He had seen the lines of sweating men, their backs bowed under the weight of smaller stones, struggling up earthen ramps. He had heard the rhythmic chants, the cracks of overseers' whips, the guttural cries of effort. But he had also seen, on rare, fleeting occasions, moments that defied all logic. A block of granite, too immense for 20 men to move, seeming to glide with a strange, almost imperceptible tremor. A segment of the ramp, built yesterday, appearing perfectly smooth, devoid of the telltale wear of thousands of dragging stones. He had dismissed them as tricks of the light, the delirium of the sun, or the exaggerated tales of weary laborers. Yet, the seeds of doubt, once sown, had taken root deep within his curious soul. Now, as a man in his late 20s, privileged with access to the royal archives and the construction records of the pharaohs, Imhotep found his skepticism validated, not diminished. The official records were meticulously kept for everything: grain harvests, tax collections, temple offerings, even the number of sandals delivered to the royal court. Yet, when it came to the pyramids, the details regarding the actual process of moving and placing the titanic blocks became strangely vague, almost poetic. They spoke of the breath of Ra guiding the stones, the will of Osiris shaping the walls, the chants of the priests lifting the spirit. They spoke of countless laborers, yes, but never truly explained the how for blocks weighing tens, even hundreds of tons, lifted hundreds of cubits into the sky, fitted with precision that even the finest jeweler would envy. He spent weeks in the dusty, incense-laden halls of the Parank library, poring over ancient papyri, deciphering faded hieroglyphs, seeking a single, concrete engineering blueprint that explained the mechanics. He found none. He found astronomical alignments, theological justifications, funerary rituals, and lists of materials, but no detailed schematics of the lifting mechanisms for the largest stones. The ramps described in texts seemed far too fragile for such immense loads. The sheer volume of stone, millions of blocks, each cut with painstaking precision from quarries miles away, then transported, and finally placed with razor-thin gaps that barely admitted a papyrus sheet. It was an undertaking that begged for a deeper explanation than mere ropes, sledges, and manpower. You seek to unravel the threads of the gods, Imhotep, a voice rasped from the shadows of a corner, startling him. It was Hemka, the high priest of Ptah, an old man whose eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharpness that missed little. He was a pillar of tradition, a staunch guardian of the ancient mysteries, and he viewed Imhotep's relentless inquiries with a mixture of suspicion and thinly veiled disapproval. "No, revered priest," Imhotep replied, bowing respectfully. "I seek only to understand the wisdom of our ancestors, to learn how they achieved such divine marvels. Surely, even the gods work through means comprehensible to man, if man is but clever enough to discern them." Hemka scoffed, a dry, rattling sound. "The gods work through faith, young one. Through obedience. Through the unwavering will of the pharaoh who is a living god. To question the how is to question the why. And the why is clear. To ensure the pharaoh's ascension to the stars, to maintain Ma'at, cosmic order on earth. Do not presume to dissect the divine." Imhotep offered a polite but noncommittal smile, then returned to his scrolls. Hemka's words were the prevailing sentiment, but they brought no solace to Imhotep's inquiring mind. He yearned for the logic of levers, the physics of force, the mathematics of construction. But what he found hinted at something far more ethereal. He sought out the oldest stonemasons, men whose hands were gnarled and scarred by decades of chiseling and hauling. They spoke of techniques lost to time, of certain songs sung at certain times, of the earth's hum and the sky's whisper. They spoke of certain stones, particularly the harder granites and basalts, that seemed to respond to something beyond physical touch. One ancient foreman, a man named Kensu, with eyes like chipped flint, spoke of a strange light that sometimes shimmered around the largest blocks, almost like heat haze, making them feel lighter than air for a fleeting moment. He dismissed it, like everyone else, as the blessing of the gods or the heat-induced madness, but Imhotep noted the consistency of the tales. He began to spend his evenings on the plateau itself, observing the remaining construction crews on smaller projects like the Sphinx Temple. He watched the setting sun paint the pyramids in hues of fiery orange and soft rose, their geometric perfection stark against the shifting dunes. He would walk among the foundations, run his hands over the massive, precisely cut blocks, feeling the cool, smooth surface of limestone that had been placed centuries ago. The joints were almost invisible, so tight that not even a single desert ant could squeeze through. This wasn't merely brute force, it was a profound understanding of material, geometry, and something else, something almost musical. One moonless night, as he sat meditating near the base of Khufu's pyramid, a deep, resonant hum vibrated through the very ground beneath him. It wasn't an earthquake, for it passed quickly, and the ground did not shake violently but rather thrummed like the deepest string of a harp. He felt it in his chest, a strange pressure, a tingling sensation in his fingertips. He looked up, and for a fleeting instant, he swore he saw a faint, almost invisible shimmering around the upper courses of the monument, as if the air itself was vibrating. He blinked, and it was gone. Had the desert played tricks on his senses? Or was this what Kensa spoke of? Driven by this new, inexplicable phenomenon, Imhotep broadened his research. He moved beyond engineering texts and delved into the more esoteric scrolls of the Parank, those normally reserved for the highest priests and initiates of the mysteries. Here, he stumbled upon fragmented texts that spoke not of lifting stones, but of harmonious resonance, the voice of creation, and the song of Thoth. These were ancient, almost mythological accounts, describing how the Neteru, the gods, had shaped the world through sound and vibration. Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and magic, was said to have spoken the universe into being with words of power. Could this be more than allegory? He found a particularly cryptic passage on a brittle obsidian scroll, brittle and blackened with age, tucked away in a neglected niche. Its hieroglyphs were archaic, difficult to parse, speaking of a chant of unbinding, a method to lessen the grip of the earth upon material objects. It described specific tones, certain celestial alignments, and the use of crystalline vessels to focus and amplify an unseen force. The text was incomplete, tantalizingly vague, but it ignited a spark in Imhotep's mind. Crystalline vessels. Harmonious resonance. The Song of Thoth. He felt a growing conviction that the secret lay not in brute force, but in a forgotten form of advanced acoustics or energetic manipulation, perhaps even connected to the very life force, the Ka, of the land and its people. His inquiries, however discreet, began to attract unwelcome attention. Not just from Hemka, but from others within the priesthood who viewed his scientific approach as a threat to their spiritual authority. The vizier, Menes, a pragmatic man focused on the smooth running of the kingdom, found Imhotep's pursuits eccentric but largely harmless as long as they didn't disrupt the flow of grain or the collection of taxes. But even Menes had limits, and questioning the divine nature of the pharaoh's monuments bordered on sedition. Imhotep knew he had to proceed with extreme caution. One evening, desperate for guidance, Imhotep sought out the old blind oracle, a reclusive hermit who lived in a desolate, rock-strewn cave far from the bustling settlements. The oracle was an outcast, believed by many to be mad, but whispered by a few to possess true insight into the ancient ways. Imhotep had heard tales of the oracle's uncanny ability to see truths hidden from others, to hear the echoes of past and future. He found the old man sitting cross-legged amidst a scattering of ancient bones and dried herbs, his sightless eyes milky white, yet seeming to pierce through Imhotep's very soul. The air in the cave was cool, smelling of dust and dried blood, but also of something else, a faint, metallic tang. You seek the song, seeker of knowledge, the oracle croaked, his voice like grinding stones. You hear the whispers beneath the earth, the hum in the air. The stones speak to you, do they not? Imhotep knelt, reverence overcoming his usual skepticism. Revered one, I seek to understand how the great stones were lifted. The records are silent on the true mechanics. The oracle chuckled, a dry, reedy sound. Mechanics? Ah, the mind of man, always seeking gears and levers. The pyramids were built not by hands alone, nor by ropes and ramps, but by the breath of creation itself. By the Ma'at that courses through all things. By the voices of the unified Ka. He gestured vaguely towards the distant plateau. The great houses were sung into existence, not by human voice alone, but by the resonance of human will attuned to the cosmic harmony. The Neteru shaped the world with sound, and the first builders, those of the first time, they remembered the primordial song. They knew how to coax the earth, how to align with the stars, how to focus the collective Ka of the people into a single, binding frequency. They sang the stone's light. Imhotep listened, captivated. The obsidian scroll spoke of a chant of unbinding and crystalline vessels. Are these connected to what you speak of? A slow, knowing smile spread across the oracle's wizened face. Ah, the echoes of Thoth. The scroll hints at the method, yes. But it is more than a chant, it is a profound understanding of the universe. The pyramids are not merely tombs for the pharaohs, they are engines. Engines to channel the very lifeblood of the cosmos. Anchors of Ma'at. Without them, the balance would falter. The Nile would not rise, and chaos would reign. The oracle reached out a trembling hand, surprisingly strong, and grasped Imhotep's wrist. You are close, young scribe, closer than any in 1,000 years. But beware. Such knowledge is a double-edged blade. It can bring balance, or it can tear the fabric of existence. The knowledge was hidden for a reason. The first time ended in catastrophe, when the song was misused, twisted into discord. Imhotep felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night. Misused? How? Discord. Greed. Power without wisdom. The song is of unity, of harmony. If sung with malice, with imbalance, it can shatter. Go now. Seek the place where the first song was last sung in its purest form. It lies beneath the oldest of the pyramids, the one that whispers of beginnings, not endings. The oracle fell silent, his eyes once again seeming to stare into nothingness. Imhotep understood. The oldest pyramid was not Khufu's nor even Khafre's. It was the step pyramid of Djoser in Saqqara, built by the legendary architect Imhotep, his namesake, centuries before the Giza marvels. It was the first true pyramid, the genesis of all that followed. Armed with this cryptic clue, Imhotep returned to his studies with renewed fervor. He shifted his focus from Giza to Saqqara, delving into the foundational texts and obscure legends surrounding Djoser's reign. The step pyramid was less perfect, more experimental, a series of mastabas stacked upon each other. Perhaps, he mused, the builders of Djoser's time were still perfecting the song, still experimenting with its power. He studied the unusual composition of the stones used in the step pyramid, noting their varied origins and the presence of certain crystalline veins that were rare in other structures. He meticulously copied every available diagram, every fragment of a prayer or ritual associated with its construction. He noted recurring symbols, interlocking spirals, depictions of converging sound waves, and human figures in postures that seemed to denote focused concentration or singing. Weeks turned into months. Imhotep became a familiar, if somewhat eccentric, figure at Saqqara, often seen tracing patterns in the sand, humming strange, low notes to himself, or running his hands over ancient, weather-beaten stones. He began to experiment on a tiny scale, using a few small, naturally resonant stones he had collected. He would tap them, rub them, and most importantly, hum specific tones into them, trying to recreate the hum he had felt on the Giza plateau. The results were negligible, but sometimes a faint, almost imperceptible tremor or a change in the stone's surface texture would confirm he was on the right path. It wasn't brute force he was missing, it was scale. It was the collective. His most promising lead came from a weathered carving found deep within a forgotten tomb chamber near the step pyramid, depicting what looked like dozens of figures, their mouths open in song, arrayed around a massive block of stone. Above them, subtle lines emanated from their mouths, converging on the stone, which seemed to float slightly off the ground. It was an ancient depiction, stylized and abstract, but unmistakable. and beside it a faint inscription, "By the voice, the earth relents." He returned to the obsidian scroll, the chant of unbinding. With the new context, the abstract phrases began to coalesce. The breath of Ra could be the collective breath, the synchronized sound. The heart of Osiris could be the rhythm of the chant, its vital pulse. The crystalline vessels were clearly instruments designed to focus and amplify. But where were these vessels? And how was the song performed? The scroll spoke of a hidden chamber beneath the first pyramid, a place sealed away after the misuse of the song, a repository of the true knowledge guarded by the silent wisdom of Thoth. It was a bold claim, one that most scholars would dismiss as mere myth. But Imhotep's intuition screamed otherwise. The oracle had spoken of it. The fragmented texts alluded to it. He spent days mapping the subterranean passages of the step pyramid, crawling through tight, dust-choked tunnels guided by the dim flicker of his lamp. He knew the general layout of Djoser's vast underground complex, the burial chamber, the galleries, the untouched storerooms. But the scroll hinted at something older, deeper, something beneath the very foundations, predating even Djoser's reign, perhaps dating back to the legendary Zep Tepi, the first time when the gods walked among men. His search was painstaking, frustrating. He encountered cave-ins, swarms of bats, and the oppressive silence of ages. He navigated complex labyrinths, deciphered misleading symbols, and endured the gnawing fear that he was chasing a phantom. The air grew heavy with the scent of ancient earth and the faint, sweet smell of decay. Then, in a section of the pyramid's base rarely accessed, behind a cleverly disguised false wall he found only by meticulously tapping and listening for a hollow sound, he discovered a narrow, sloping shaft. It was clearly not part of the original Djoser design, rougher, yet imbued with an unmistakable aura of great antiquity. It plunged into darkness, smelling of ozone and something else, something clean, metallic, like polished stone. He descended cautiously, his heart thrumming a rhythm against his ribs. The passage was unadorned, unlike the usual hieroglyph-laden tombs. It seemed functional, its purpose singular, to lead to something important. The air grew cooler, strangely fresh, as if from a subterranean spring. The deeper he went, the more he felt a faint vibration, a barely perceptible hum in the very bedrock. It was the same sensation he had felt on the Giza Plateau, magnified. The shaft opened into a vast, unadorned chamber, perfectly square, its walls and ceiling crafted from a dark, smooth stone unlike any he had ever seen, a type of black granite, polished to a mirror sheen. It was utterly devoid of human ornamentation, no paintings, no hieroglyphs, only the stark, minimalist beauty of pure form. In the center of the chamber, bathed in the faint, ethereal glow emitted by fissures in the stone, stood a single, massive sarcophagus-like structure carved from the same black granite. It radiated a cold, silent power. But it was not the sarcophagus that captured his attention. Arranged around it, on pedestals of the same dark stone, were several objects. Not gold, not jewels, but exquisitely crafted instruments unlike any he had ever beheld. They were not musical instruments in the conventional sense, but more like sculptural forms. Smooth, elongated crystal rods, some terminating in intricate spiral designs, others in complex geometric shapes that seemed to catch and refract the faint light. There were shallow, perfectly circular bowls of polished obsidian and several large, perfectly cut spheres of pure, translucent quartz suspended in delicate, seemingly weightless frames. Each object hummed faintly, a low, barely audible frequency that resonated with the hum of the chamber itself. And finally, on a central altar of polished red granite lay a single, meticulously preserved papyrus scroll. It was not brittle and faded like the obsidian scroll, but supple and vibrant as if time had no dominion over it. Its hieroglyphs gleamed with an inner light, and they were instantly comprehensible, not archaic and fragmented. With trembling hands, Imhotep reached for it. The moment his fingers brushed the ancient papyrus, a surge of energy, cold and electric, coursed through him. The hum in the chamber intensified, rising to a clear, resonant tone that vibrated through his very bones. The crystalline instruments around him pulsed with a soft, inner luminescence. He unrolled the scroll, and his breath hitched. This was not a fragment. This was the complete chant of unbinding. It contained intricate diagrams of the crystalline resonators, instructions for their placement, detailed notations of specific vocalizations, and, most profoundly, the precise celestial alignments required to channel the Earth's geomantic energies and the cosmic frequencies of the stars. It spoke of the unified Ka of the chanters, the collective human life force, aligning with the divine Ba of the land itself, and the Ak, the glorified spirit of the ancestors. The papyrus described how the pyramids were not merely built by physical effort, but by a profound understanding of universal harmony, of sound as a shaping force, of vibration as a conduit for creation. The builders of the first time, the original architects, were not just engineers but masters of cosmic resonance, able to make stone yield to their collective will by singing the very fabric of existence into submission. The mystery of the pyramids, the impossible feat, suddenly unfolded before him not as a miracle of divine intervention alone, but as a testament to an ancient, utterly lost science, a symbiotic dance between humanity and the cosmos. They were not merely structures, they were gargantuan instruments tuned to the very heartbeat of the earth and the song of the stars. Imhotep stood in the silent, humming chamber, the scroll clutched in his hands, the weight of ages pressing down upon him. He had found it, the key to the greatest mystery of Egypt. But the oracle's warning echoed in his mind. Such knowledge is a double-edged blade. It can shatter. The true challenge, he realized, was not just in understanding the song, but in learning how to wield it responsibly, to restore Ma'at, not to invite chaos. The first chapter of his quest had ended, but the true journey, the perilous one, had only just begun. The echoes of impossible stones had finally yielded their secret, and the silent, pulsing hum of the chamber promised a revelation that would forever change his understanding of his world. The journey back through the narrow, twisting shaft felt different to Imhotep. The air, once cool and pristine, now seemed heavy with the weight of profound revelation. The hum, which had resonated through him in the hidden chamber, lingered, a ghost vibration in his bones. The perfectly preserved papyrus scroll, secreted beneath his linen tunic, felt like a living thing, pulsing with the ancient knowledge it contained. He had unlocked the mystery, yes, but the unlocking had only unveiled a deeper, more formidable one, the true purpose of the pyramids and the terrifying responsibility of holding such power. The scroll was not merely a set of instructions for levitating colossal stones. It was a treatise on cosmic harmony, a philosophical text disguised as an engineering manual. It described the universe as a grand symphony, each planet, each star, each living thing, contributing its unique note. The Neteru, the gods, were not distant anthropomorphic deities, but rather personifications of these fundamental cosmic forces, aspects of the great song. Humanity, the scroll explained, was a vital part of this orchestra, capable of channeling and focusing the collective Ka, the vital life force, into a resonant frequency that could interact with the very fabric of reality. The crystalline instruments Imhotep had seen in the chamber, the rods, bowls, and spheres, were not just ceremonial objects. They were sophisticated resonators, amplifiers, and frequency modulators designed to focus the diffuse energies of earth and sky and to amplify the collective human vocalizations into a coherent, powerful wave. The pyramids themselves, the scroll revealed, were not merely tombs but colossal, geomantically aligned machines. Their precise angles, their orientation to the cardinal points and specific constellations, their internal chambers and shafts, all were designed to act as conduits, focusing lenses for these cosmic and terrestrial energies. Their true purpose, Imhotep now understood, transcended the earthly concept of a pharaoh's burial site. Yes, they aided the pharaoh's journey to the stars, ensuring his Ak, his transfigured spirit, could navigate the Duat and join the eternal dance of the cosmos. But more profoundly, they were anchors of Ma'at, the cosmic order designed to channel life-giving energy to the land of Kemet. They ensured the cyclical flooding of the Nile, the fertility of the soil, the health of the populace, and the very continuation of creation itself. They were a vast, silent prayer in stone, a constant reaffirmation of Egypt's harmonious relationship with the universe. The knowledge was intoxicating, yet terrifying. The scroll spoke of the first time, the Zep Tepi, when this power was understood and wielded openly. It recounted a golden age of unparalleled prosperity and spiritual enlightenment when humanity walked in closer communion with the Neteru. But it also contained a stark warning: the fall came when the Song of the Stars was misused, when individual ambition superseded collective harmony. When the pure resonance was twisted into discord by greed and the desire for dominion over others. The result was cataclysm, earthquakes, droughts, plagues, and a near obliteration of civilization. The survivors, the true guardians of wisdom, had sealed away the deepest knowledge, leaving behind only the grand, enigmatic monuments. Their true purpose shrouded in mystery, hoping that future generations might rediscover it. but only when wisdom had eclipsed ambition. Imhotep returned to Memphis, the scroll hidden, its secrets gnawing at him. He ate little, slept less, his mind racing through the implications. Should he reveal this? To whom? The high priest Hemka would see it as a monstrous heresy, stripping the gods of their mystery, empowering man beyond his station. The vizier Menes would see its potential for power, perhaps for building even grander monuments, but would he grasp the delicate balance required, the spiritual responsibility? The pharaoh, a young ruler more concerned with military campaigns and the stability of his reign, might either dismiss it as madness or seek to exploit it for conquest, leading to the very chaos the ancients had feared. He felt profoundly alone, isolated by the sheer weight of his discovery. His usual companions, his fellow scribes, his mentors, none would comprehend the magnitude of what he had found. They were bound by tradition, by the comfortable dogma of the temples. He found himself drawn back to the old blind oracle. He journeyed across the desert once more, the sun beating down mercilessly, finding solace only in the thought that the oracle, at least, understood. "You have found the core," the oracle murmured, his sightless gaze fixed on Imhotep as he recounted his discovery, carefully omitting the exact details of the scroll's location. "The song of Thoth, the breath of Ra, the heartbeat of Osiris. It lives within the stone. Yes, but it must be sung through human spirit, unified and pure." "But the scroll warns of misuse," Imhotep said, his voice raw. "Of discord, of catastrophe. How can such power be wielded safely in a world of men driven by ambition?" The oracle nodded slowly. "That is the eternal question, young one. Ma'ata's balance. The song requires balance. It is not merely a tool for moving stones, it is a way of living. If sung with purity of heart, for the good of all, it brings prosperity and order. If sung with malice, for selfish gain, it brings ruin." He paused, a faint, sad smile playing on his lips. The ancients understood this. That is why they sealed it away. Not to hide it, but to protect it from those unworthy. And from those who, in their ignorance, would destroy themselves with it. "Then what must I do?" Imhotep implored. "Hide it forever? Let Egypt continue to believe the old myths while this profound truth sleeps beneath the sands. Truth, like the Nile, always finds its way," the oracle replied. "It is not for you to bury it, but to guide its flow. You must prove it, not to the masses, for they would not understand, and fear would turn to chaos, but to those few who have the wisdom to comprehend, and the heart to protect." The oracle's words solidified Imhotep's resolve. He needed to demonstrate the song not on a grand scale, but enough to convince a select few, to show them the truth without unleashing its full, potentially destructive power. He decided to seek out two individuals he trusted implicitly. Neferkare, a young, pragmatic stonemason foreman he had befriended during his observations at Giza, a man of quiet intelligence and open mind, and Seshemu, a junior priest of Thoth, who, though steeped in tradition, possessed an insatiable intellectual curiosity and a deep respect for the wisdom of the ancients. He gathered them in a remote, abandoned quarry far from any prying eyes, under the guise of an experimental construction technique. Neferkare brought a small crew of his most loyal and discreet workers, men who trusted their foreman implicitly. Seshemu came alone, his brow furrowed with skepticism. "What is this madness, Imhotep?" Seshemu whispered, glancing around the desolate quarry. "You speak of a secret that defies the very laws of earth and sky." "It defies our laws," Seshemu, Imhotep corrected gently, "but not the laws of the cosmos." The ancients knew a deeper truth. He laid out the crystalline resonators he had meticulously recreated based on the scroll's diagrams, using the purest quartz and obsidian he could find, shaping them in secret. They were smaller, cruder replicas of the originals, but Imhotep hoped they would suffice for a limited demonstration. He showed them the diagrams from the scroll, explaining the concept of collective Ka, of resonance, of cosmic alignment. He spoke of the song of the stars, not a song of human notes, but of cosmic frequencies channeled through disciplined vocalization and focused intent. Neferkare, the pragmatic stonemason, was the hardest to convince. He understood the sweat, the strain, the sheer physical effort required to move even a small block. He had seen men break under the weight. "You tell me that if we sing, this stone will move?" he asked, gesturing to a massive, half-quarried block of limestone, perhaps 20 tons, that had been abandoned due to its immovable weight. "Forgive me, Imhotep, but this sounds like the ramblings of a fevered mind." Not just any song, Neferkare, Imhotep explained patiently. And not just any voice. It requires precision, unity, and a specific alignment with the celestial currents. It requires the channeling of our very life force, our Ka, focused through these instruments. He instructed them in the precise postures, the rhythmic breathing, the specific humming tones, and the almost meditative focus required. It was not a joyous hymn, but a deep, resonant chant, a sustained, complex chord that seemed to vibrate from the very core of their beings. He had chosen a specific hour, aligning with the scroll's instructions for a minor celestial conjunction that day, not powerful enough for a grand pyramid, but sufficient for a single stubborn stone. As the sun began its descent, painting the western sky in fiery oranges and purples, Imhotep positioned the crystalline resonators around the massive limestone block. He guided the small group of chanters Neferkare, Seshemu, who, despite his skepticism, was a diligent student of the precise tones, and the loyal masons. He himself stood at the head, holding a smaller, beautifully crafted quartz rod, acting as the conductor, focusing their combined will. "Now," he intoned, his voice low but firm, "breathe. Focus your Ka. Become one with the earth, one with the sky, one with each other. Feel the rhythm of Ma'at flow through you. Sing the song of the stars." They began. It was an awkward, hesitant start. Their voices at first were discordant, uncertain. Imhotep felt the energy dissipate like smoke in the wind. He adjusted their pitch, guided their breathing, urging them to find the unity, the precise resonant frequency he had painstakingly transcribed from the scroll. Then, slowly, something shifted. A deep hum began to vibrate from the quartz rods, a sound that seemed to emanate from within the stone itself. The air around the limestone block began to shimmer, faintly at first, then with increasing intensity like heat rising from the desert floor. The chanters felt a strange tingling in their hands and feet, a warmth spreading through their chests. Their voices, once disparate, began to lock into a single, unified resonance. A deep, primal chord that vibrated not just in their ears, but in their very bones. Neferkare's eyes widened, his initial skepticism replaced by dawning awe. The stone, the 20-ton behemoth that had defied all their efforts, began to tremble. Not a violent tremor, but a subtle, almost imperceptible vibration, like a living thing awakening. Dust motes danced in the shimmering air around it. "Hold the tone," Imhotep urged, his own voice thrumming with focused energy, his quartz rod glowing faintly. "Feel the lessening grip. Guide it." Then, with a soft, almost inaudible sigh, the massive block of limestone, almost imperceptibly, lifted. It didn't soar, it didn't crash. It simply floated, perhaps a finger's width off the quarry floor, hovering in place, swaying gently, as if suspended on an invisible cushion of air. The men gasped, their voices momentarily faltering. But Imhotep quickly brought them back, their fear and wonder translating into renewed, focused effort. The air around the stone pulsed with light, a soft, golden aura. The hum intensified, a deep, resonant chord that filled the entire quarry. They held it for perhaps 30 heartbeats, the stone hovering effortlessly, then, on Imhotep's subtle signal, they gently shifted their collective intent, and the stone, still floating, moved perhaps a cubit to the left, settling softly onto a prepared flat surface with barely a sound. Silence descended upon the quarry, broken only by the ragged breaths of the men and the lingering hum in the air. Neferkare, the grizzled stonemason, dropped to his knees, his face pale with disbelief and wonder. Seshemu, the priest, stood motionless, his mouth agape, his eyes fixed on the moved stone, tears streaming silently down his face. "By the Neteru," Neferkare whispered, touching the stone as if to confirm its solidity. It moved. By sound. By the song. This was the unlocking. Not just of the pyramid's secret, but of their very understanding of the world. The mystery of how the pyramids were built was not an act of brute force or simple divine magic, but a profound science and art of cosmic resonance that made the impossible possible. The immediate aftermath was a blur of frantic discussion, awe, and desperate promises of secrecy. Neferkare, once the skeptic, became a fervent believer, convinced that this knowledge could revolutionize Egypt, making every task effortless. Seshemu, the priest, saw it as a profound confirmation of the deeper, mystical truths of his faith, a tangible link between humanity and the divine. Imhotep knew the true challenge had just begun. He had demonstrated a sliver of the song's power. Now came the perilous choice, what to do with it. He decided to approach the pharaoh after careful consultation with the oracle and his two new confidants. He prepared his presentation meticulously, not just demonstrating the principle but explaining the philosophical underpinnings of Ma'at, the dangers of misuse, and the true, benevolent purpose of the pyramids as cosmic anchors. The pharaoh, a young, ambitious ruler named Mentuhotep, listened with a mixture of impatience and thinly veiled curiosity. The vizier Menes was present, his expression stoic, ready to dismiss it as charlatanry. Hemka, the high priest, had heard whispers and attended, his eyes blazing with righteous indignation, prepared to denounce Imhotep as a sorcerer. Imhotep, with Seshemu by his side and Neferkare as the direct witness, recounted his findings leading up to the small demonstration in the remote quarry. He spoke of the obsidian scroll, the ancient knowledge, the true nature of the Neteru, and humanity's place in the cosmic symphony. And you claim that the pyramids, the very houses of eternity, were built not by our tireless people but by singing. Hemka finally thundered, his voice laced with scorn. This is blasphemy. You strip the gods of their power and seek to elevate man to their station. No, revered priest, Imhotep countered, his voice calm but firm. I reveal the truth of their power and man's sacred connection to it. The gods did not build the pyramids for us, they taught our ancestors how to build them through understanding the very fabric of creation. The pyramids are not merely static monuments, they are living engines of cosmic harmony built with Ma'at for Ma'at. To the pharaoh's astonishment and the vizier's quiet intrigue, Imhotep proposed a slightly larger, controlled demonstration. Not a pyramid, not even a temple, but something simpler. The levitation and precise placement of a single, colossal lintel stone, weighing perhaps 50 tons, over a ceremonial gateway within the palace complex that had been stalled for weeks by its sheer weight. The pharaoh, intrigued by the promise of effortless construction and perhaps a new source of prestige, reluctantly agreed on the condition that Imhotep would face severe consequences if he failed. The chosen day arrived. The palace courtyard was filled with anxious officials, skeptical priests, and the murmuring populace. The colossal lintel lay inert, an impossible burden. Imhotep, with Neferkare leading a hand-picked, thoroughly trained team of 100 chanters and Seshemu overseeing the precise placement of the crystalline resonators, began the ritual. The initial silence was broken only by the whispers of the crowd and the flapping of ibis wings. Then Imhotep raised his quartz rod and the unified chant began. This time it was more powerful, more focused. The chanters, their hearts filled with shared purpose and the awe of recent revelation, poured their ka into the song. The crystals pulsed with a dazzling, inner light, casting shimmering patterns on the ancient stone. The very air seemed to thicken, to vibrate with an unseen energy. The lintel stone, massive and ancient, began to hum. The sound intensified, a deep, resonant tone that resonated through the ground, up the onlookers' legs, and into their chests. The air around the stone shimmered violently, distorting the light. Then, to the collective gasp of the assembled crowd, the stone, slowly, majestically, began to rise. It ascended smoothly, effortlessly into the air, reaching the precise height of the gateway. It drifted sideways, guided by Imhotep's subtle shifts in focus and the collective intent of the chanters, settling perfectly into place with a soft, resonant thud that echoed through the courtyard. The fit was so precise, so perfect, that it seemed to meld seamlessly with the existing structure. A stunned silence hung in the air, followed by an explosion of murmurs, then shouts of awe and reverence. The pharaoh, Mentuhotep, rose from his throne, his face etched with disbelief, then elation. The vizier Menes's impassive mask finally cracked, a look of profound astonishment spreading across his features. Hemka, the high priest, stood frozen, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and dawning, reluctant understanding. He had seen a miracle, yes, but not one wrought by a distant god, but by man, through a profound connection to the divine energy. He had seen his rigid world shatter. The mystery was unveiled. The pyramids were no longer just monuments of brute force, but living testaments to an ancient wisdom, a profound understanding of the universe's inherent harmony. Imhotep became not just a scribe, but the royal architect, the keeper of the song, responsible for guarding this immense knowledge. The pharaoh, after much deliberation and guided by the newly enlightened vizier and a humbled Hemka, who, in a remarkable shift, embraced the new understanding as a deeper revelation of the god's true nature, made a decree. The knowledge of the Song of the Stars would not be widely disseminated. It was too powerful, too dangerous for the masses, who might misuse it, leading to the ancient catastrophe. Instead, it would become the most closely guarded secret of the pharaonic line and the highest order of priests, to be used only for monumental tasks of national importance, for times of great need, and always, under the strictest adherence to the principles of Ma'at. The pyramids of Egypt continued to stand, silent and enigmatic to the outside world, their purpose still shrouded in myth and wonder. But for Imhotep, and for the select few who now carried the flame of ancient wisdom, they were no longer just inert stones. They were colossal instruments, constantly resonating with the cosmic hum, their very existence a continuous song of the stars, a prayer in stone, anchoring Ma'at to the land of Kemet, waiting for those with the wisdom to hear them, and the purity of heart to understand. The true legacy of Egypt's greatest mystery was not merely its construction, but the profound wisdom it encapsulated, a silent, eternal melody woven into the very fabric of the cosmos.